מזמור לדוד. אדוני מי יגור באוהלך, משכון בהר קדשך. הולך תמים ופועל צדק ודובר אמס בלבבו. לא רגל על לשונו, לא עשה לרעהו רעה, וחרפה לא נשא על קרבו. מבזה בעיניו נמאס, ואז ירא אדוני יכבד. Nishbal lehorav lo yamir, kaspel lo nasan beneshech, v'shochad al naki lo lakoch, osa eile lo yimot lo lam. Psalm of David, Lord, who may sojourn in your tent, who may dwell on your holy mountain. One who walks in purity, does what is righteous, and speaks truth from the heart, who has no slander on the tongue, nor has done harm to a fellow, nor casts disgrace towards a neighbor, in whose eyes a contemptible person is repulsive, but who honors those who are in awe of the Lord, who swears truthfully even to personal harm, and never retracts, who does not lend money on interest, nor takes a bribe against the innocent. One who does these things shall never falter. This psalm, Psalm 15, is a perfect encapsulation of the life of Albert Pollack, Avram Ruvain Ben Chana, who we say goodbye to and the world says goodbye to after having had the benefit of his presence for over a century. And while it's difficult to encapsulate almost 102 years, this psalm does so remarkably well. It's especially difficult after such a rich life full of great difficulties and great triumphs to struggle with the reality that I know Joey mentioned to me yesterday, that it being Rosh Chodesh with whatever limitations are placed on eulogizing. So I want to first give the opportunity to the family to share some remarks in that vein about their dear departed patriarch. Now I'll call on Joey first to start us off.
Good morning, everyone. Bear with me because I wrote this out last night, but I don't want to read what I wrote. I'm looking here, and the box is like my dad. It's unfinished. He's done so many things in his life, but I don't think he was finished. He touched so many of us. I'm looking through here. How many here did he photograph your wedding or bar mitzvah? I mean, Dad and Madeline would go to Heinen's or John Eagle or wherever, and people would come up to him and say, "Mr. Pollack, I'm so-and-so. You photographed my bar mitzvah." And my dad at that point, legally blind, couldn't see, "Who are you?" And Madeline would say, "This is so-and-so." My dad leaves behind quite a legacy. Well, number one, when Hashem created my dad, he had to break the mold because it wouldn't last 102 years like my dad did. But he left quite a legacy behind. Dad was a builder. Anything he touched just was fantastic. He built 2 houses, the house that I grew up in, the house that he shared his life with Madeline. My dad was a gardener. He made things grow. He took from the earth where there was nothing and made it flourish. He was a photographer. He captured people's lives. He was a photographic historian, and he passed all that on to me. He leaves behind his 2 children, my sister and myself, who he loved us dearly. He leaves Madeline, who he's been with for 50 years, 50 happy, fantastic years. Leaves behind 2 stepsons that he looked at as his own. He leaves behind a daughter-in-law, my wife, who he always looked at as his own daughter, not a daughter-in-law. And whenever I talk to him, how's Mara? How's Mara? He leaves behind all his grandchildren who he adored and his great-grandchildren. And if you ask Madeline anytime there was anything, I got to go to Columbus to see Allie or Joey. I got to, if there was something. He always had to be a part of everyone's life. He taught me the values that his mother taught him, to always be kind to people, to be good to people. And I lived my life that way. In the studio, if he ever found out that I did not treat someone properly, he probably would have come in and shut me down. Dad, we're all going to miss you. I can't be sad. I am proud to have had you as my father for 71 years, to have a father who's almost 102, who has been there physically and mentally healthy for your whole life. Your body said it's time. So we all love you, and thank you for making us who we are. And thank you, everyone, for being here. I forgot to mention my brother-in-law, Mark. And Mark was always there for my dad, anytime my dad needed anything.
My father, and Joey also, captured moments through his exceptional photography. It brought him great joy and satisfaction to know that the families would have those pictures and the memories for generations. I've got to put on my glasses. This is a poem called The Dash by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noticed that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was a dash between the years. For that dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth, and now only those who loved him know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love, and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough, consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's action to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say and how you spent your dash? And lastly, I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation and gratitude to you, Madeline. Your selfless devotion to my father definitely contribute to his longevity. Their love was so evident to the last moment.
We have gathered here today to commemorate the life of my Zaidi, my grandfather, Albert Pollack. Zaidi was a devoted husband to his loving wife, Madeline, with whom he cherished the latter 50 years of his life. Following the horrors of the Holocaust and prior to settling in the U.S., Zaidi relocated to a DP, displaced persons camp, in Germany, where he became an accomplished photographer. Not only did he capture beautiful moments through his lens, but he also used his skilled hands to craft stunning frames and wooden items such as chairs and couches and tables. Zaidi always questioned why things were done using a particular method and often sought to revise it in a manner which would result in a better final product constructed with increased efficiency. A true craftsman at heart, his crowning achievement was the construction of his own homes. Zaidi cherished spending time with his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, engaging in woodworking projects, gardening, feeding the fish, and sharing stories of the past. Zaidi will be deeply missed by all who knew and loved him. We find solace in the fact that he lived a healthy life, avoiding the need for any medical intervention. He peacefully passed away in his sleep, a truly remarkable way to depart from this world. Zaidi lived a full and remarkable life, nearly reaching the age of 102. His life and the many years he shared with us are truly a cause for celebration, which should not be lost as we mourn his passing. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm the daughter of Glenn, Zaidi's older stepson. Bear with me because I cry at everything these days. I'm going to start with an excerpt from a poem that I wrote about my Zaidi. My Zaidi is good at taking out splinters. If you've got a splinter, just take it to Zaidi. He'll take care of you. I'm visiting home just after I finish college when I get a splinter. Grandma tells me to take it to Zaidi. He pulls out his magnifying glass, his desk lamp, and his tweezers. I let his shaking hands tear my young flesh, because how can I tell him he's too old to do what Zaidis are supposed to do? My Zaidi was good at many things, including taking out splinters. He not only survived a war, but fought back. He built a photography business and 2 houses, just to name a few of his greatest hits. Perhaps most importantly, my Zaidi was very good at loving. Right up to my last visit, he was never too old to give me a kiss on the kepi. He was not just my only Zaidi, but the only grandfather I've known in my life. And as far as loving goes, he was more than enough. In his final years, the stories that he told over and over were stories of generosity and kindness. The time I asked him to make me a jewelry box, and he made them for all of the granddaughters. The time he spared a Nazi's life. The time a man was generous enough to give him food when he was alone and recovering from an injury during the war. He was also an incredibly resilient survivor who told stories of hard work and smart decisions. My parents have been separated since I was a baby, and Zaidi always made a point to ask about my mom and my stepdad, who are here with us today. My Zaidi was perhaps best of all at loving my grandma, and our hearts are all breaking a second time for her. I don't have a neat ending, but thank you all for being here to honor Zaidi's life today.
Hello, everyone. Family too. My Zaidi, our rock, my father, Joey. I told him and my mom last night that Zaidi knew and knows how I feel about him, and that I wasn't going to get up here, but I feel that I would be doing a disservice to him if I did not. The one prominent thing that Zaidi told me is that after the war, he had a suitcase full of money. And he didn't want to walk around and be a target. And he didn't want to be seen as a victim. So he went and he bought a camera so that he would look like a tourist. And from that camera, he learned how to take pictures and photograph family, because to him, that was always what was most important. And he wasn't a victim. He was one that, through everything, he still saw the good in everybody. And that was evident in how he lived his life. He, from day one, with my relationship with my husband, every time I would see him, he would ask about family, because family is number one. And it doesn't matter what your family looks like. Family and love for one another was number one. He taught me how to build. He taught me how to do. He, no monkey feet on his car. I remember as he picked me up from elementary school, and just because something may be broken doesn't mean you get new. It means that you fix it. And he did. He fixed things. He fixed this world. He made it a better place just by being here. He brought, we're at almost 102 years old. There are so many funerals that there's maybe, 10, 20 people. And if you look here at what he has created, this here is something that would just make him so proud, because we are all a family. And Grandma, you are the reason that he is here. And I know that I've told you so many times, but if it weren't for you, Grandma, we wouldn't have had our Zaidi this long. My 3 boys would not have had their Ultra Zaidi. We are so forever grateful. And, we're going to play a round of Patchtuchis this afternoon for Zaidi. And everyone, in honor of Zaidi, put your finger on your knee. Put your finger on your knee. And if it has a horn, raise your finger. Monkey horn. Cow horn. Car horn. So, Zaidi, thank you for the Patchtuchis, and thank you for the cow horn. And we will forever miss you, and you will always be with us. And Grandma, thank you. We love you more.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jory. I'm one of the granddaughters. I want to tell you about my Zaidi. My Zaidi had beautiful hands. Maybe not conventionally beautiful hands. They might be calloused at times, and they'd been cut and injured in more ways than most emergency room doctors can handle. But they were beautiful because they were his. And as you've heard, they could build and do anything. If you've spent any time in the beautiful, light-filled home that my Zaidi built, the second one that he built for his family, you know that being there is a sensory experience. You can picture coming up the lushly forested driveway, surrounded by the organic garden he tended with such care. You might smell the currants or raspberries if you timed it right and you're lucky. You can hear the trickle of the fish ponds and the bing-bong melody of the stringed instrument he invented to serve as a doorbell. You feel the cool, polished wooden floors under your feet as you walk in, floors he cut and laid by hand in his 80s. And while you might reach out to touch the smooth alabaster cat sculpture in the living room or run a hand along the dining room table or the china cabinet, all gorgeous, all made by those hands, you'd find yourself wandering into the den. And even if ethereal light is streaming in through Glenn's stained glass windows, or the news is turned up a little too loud, or Grandma's offering you a fresh baked cookie, your eye is drawn to the shelves. Because filling the entire wall, running to the ceiling, shelves, of course built by Zaidi, to display his prized possessions. He's a military hero who was raised by a single mother. He saved countless lives. His actions undoubtedly protected the many men that he led, making it possible for them to survive the war and build families and generations. Some of those men became friends for life who would reunite with him here in Cleveland, but there are no military trophies on the shelves. He's a polyglot who spoke Polish, Yiddish, Russian, Ukrainian, Hebrew, English, more, but he joked about his terrible spelling in his 6th or 7th language. And he has no degrees on those shelves. He's a man who came to a foreign country with no formal photography training and built a business, earning a place in and the respect of his community. But he has no photography awards on those shelves, because those shelves that he built by hand reflect what he treasured most, the family and the friendships he created. Those handmade shelves are packed with wedding portraits of his children, stepchildren, and grandchildren, with photographs from graduations, anniversaries, and birthdays. Even when his vision failed, Zaidi knew that if he was sitting in his favorite chair and looking straight ahead, the faces of those he loved were staring right back at him. All of us wouldn't be here had he not built a life with those beautiful hands. I looked at those shelves this weekend, and even marveling at all of the moments captured in those images, I was struck by the infinite experiences you can't see there. Spitting watermelon seeds off the back deck, riding in a wheelbarrow, spraying homemade slug deterrent onto yellow plates in the garden in what was one of the first truly organic farms in a time long before kale was cool, laughing hysterically at competitive games of cowhorn, thank you for playing, and patchtuchas with my siblings and cousins, all emceed by Zaidi during the high holidays and breakfast. Endless Pesach Seders with Zaidi reading in Yiddish, giggling with my cousins over who would read the dunghill passage in the Haggadah, while our noses already burned from the homegrown, freshly ground horseradish. Who does that? Celebrating my wedding at a brunch hosted by Grandma and Zaidi, and seeing the understanding dawn in my new husband's eyes and my friends' eyes as they realized that all of these Zaidi built this stories were really true. Watching Zaidi when he visited our house in Chicago, sight dim, but literally touching all of the surfaces, getting down and touching the floor, nodding and approving the construction and the woodwork, saying, "This is a good house." He was so pleased and comforted that we had found a place that lived up to his standards, because he could see that it had been built by hands that cared and knew what they were doing. Visiting Zaidi and Grandma a few weeks ago after he'd had a bad fall, and thinking that as someone who cares for older adults every day and coaches family caregivers, I cannot even imagine how Grandma has done all that she has to maintain Zaidi's quality of life and dignity for so many years, single-handedly, and knowing that he knew and he appreciated it and he loved her more every day. And every morning when I open up the jewelry box that he made by hand with his inscription to me, SK, Smart Kepala, he's always called me that. When I was younger, I was bullied for being smart, and that word in other people's mouths was used as an insult. But from Zaidi, it was the highest praise. He had an uncanny ability to make me, and each of us, feel seen for our unique abilities and strengths. He never asked us to be someone we weren't. He asked us to be the best version of ourselves through his example and his wisdom. When Zara and I made it in on Saturday evenings, Zaidi was awake, sitting in his favorite chair, in the den, facing the shelves full of all the faces he loved so much. He couldn't see my face, but he knew my voice, and he told me he loved me as he held my hands, which reminded him of his mother Hannah's hands. I think he knew he was nearing the end, and he said the one thing I'd ever heard pass his lips that wasn't true. He was reflecting on his life, and he said, "I'm not special." Because he thought there was nothing special about 101 years lived according to his standards, treating others as you hope they treat you. And if you saw something that needed fixing and you could fix it, you did. His determination and his humility were unmatched. He's outlived so many of the people whose lives he saved and enriched. He redefines special for all of us, and he leaves a legacy of people who strive to live up to that example. We love you, Sid.
Today being Rosh Chodesh, the first of the month, in Jewish tradition, many of the prayers call upon God to have a zikaron, to remember us, zachrenu. And I feel that one of the things that we've heard over and over again just now in these last few minutes is how very strong Zikaron was and how he passed this on to his children, his grandchildren, great-grandchildren. This trait of memory is such a precious one, especially for anyone who went through the Holocaust. But the truth is, it's always a powerful, we all know it's a Jewish trait as well. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, would tell his grandson frequently, "Was gedenkst du?" What do you remember? The sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe said that his father, himself a Hasidic Rebbe, would tell him frequently when he was a child, "Was gedenkst du? Was gedenkst du? What do you remember? What do you remember?" And this just shone in Albert. And I have to mention, because I know there are still copies out there, although I'm sure many of you, family and friends, have this already. When Madeline came to the shul to give me a copy of Albert's book that he published a few years ago, I realized that this was a treasure for the world, a treasure for the Jewish people, because these are his memories of a difficult youth, as mentioned, being raised by a single mother, the extreme difficulties of the war years, and everything that he went through afterwards. Was gedenkst du was answered by Albert in, excelling ways. One of the things that stood out, and I know Madeline was always extremely proud of this, and I've heard it from Madeline many times, the pride that she took in his ability to create. And I want to phrase it that way, because even though everyone in the family shared how good he was with his hands, but today we're on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the day that Jewish tradition says, according to the Torah, that the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert, was built. And even though most people well-versed in Jewish tradition know that the building of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, is the basis for how Jews keep Shabbos, because the keeping of Shabbos involves the avoiding of 39 distinct acts of labor that are involved in building that Mishkan, building that temple in the desert. And then when Jews refrain from engaging in any of those 39 activities on Shabbos, then they're keeping Shabbos. But I think Albert is the first person who I've met in my life who could literally do all of those 39 acts of labor. Who's done that? You have the entire category of gardening and building things from then planting and everything, creating from scratch from the ground. You have all the activities involved in building. I was at their house yesterday and describing everything from the floor to the walls to the ceiling and every act of craftsmanship that the hero of the building of the Mishkan, Betzalel, the famous architect, artisan, Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur, that Albert was our modern day Betzalel and could be seen in the numerous acts of art and artisanship that he loved and that he promoted. I'd like to just mention that even though Albert was known to have said that the measure of a man is from the neck up, and that might be true in some contexts, it was not true of Albert, because Albert was wonderful from the neck up. But every bone in his body and all of the work that he produced was a sign that the measure of him as a man was also from the neck down, with the tremendous amount of capabilities that he showed. That skill, and not just that skill, that love, because skill isn't just a matter of science, it's art, and love goes into it, is something that everybody who witnessed it or witnessed its products can be grateful for in this world. The first time I met Albert, he came over to me. He was in shul. It was either Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, my first Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur at the shul. This was 18 years ago. And someone pointed out how he and Madeline had sponsored the beautiful artwork that Glenn produced over our Aron in the shul at Heights Jewish Center, over the Ark, a depiction of the tablets of the Ten Commandments. And Albert shared, I have to apologize, I forgot the full punchline of what he shared with me. He said, a Jew should have mazel. And he said mazel, which of course we usually associate and will translate it improperly as luck or good luck. He said mazel is an acronym, he told me. The mem, the M of mazel, stands for makom, like place. The zayin, the letter Z, stands for zman, being at the right time. And if anyone knows, please tell me what the lamed is, because I forgot. What is it? Lumdus, knowledge. Thank you. Been racking my brain for years. I couldn't remember. And I'll tell you what lumdus, the abilities, smarts, if you will, or intelligence. While the intelligence was clearly there, I have to point out, again, arguing with Albert, the mazel that he had was not the result of the mazel of the place he was born, because that place certainly had no mazel for the Jewish people in the years of his, early adulthood and what he went through. And the same thing for Zman. No one would call it mazel to be, a young adult in Europe in 1940. A young Jewish adult in Europe in 1940 or 41. But he used these God-given gifts and created through planting and through building something that is just so stunning to behold. And instead of just witnessing it, he gave us the memories to go along with it. His memories that produced all of this. And this Levaya, as we escort him now is a tribute not to just this life, but to the memories that he gave all of us, that he gave the Jewish people, that he gave the world. Exquisite memories that he put to paper with Madeline's help over the course of the last number of years. And I told him yesterday, I said, there should be millions of these. I don't mean only millions of copies of Albert's book, of course, but I mean millions if only the Jewish people, if everyone who had gone through and survived Europe had produced this kind of testimony, we would be even a richer nation for it. But even this was extremely precious, and I was always extremely grateful to Albert for having produced such a work as great as any of his works of planting or building. So now as we go, and we'll travel to Akron to lay him to rest, we realize that because of the memories that he provided to his family and to his friends and to the community at large, we are all wealthier and we are all enriched because he gave this to us. And we tell you, Avram Reuven ben Chana, thank you. Because it is Rosh Chodesh, we don't conclude now with the formal memorial prayer, the Kel Molei Rachamim. So we'll be headed to the cemetery now, but we'll close now with the reading of one more psalm. It's a rather famous one that speaks of the valley of the shadow of death. And we think about this now because here's a man who lived year after year in those difficult years in the Polish division of the Russian army, living day by day in the valley of the shadow of death, and yet showed a tremendous amount of courage and fearlessness as a result. So as I say this psalm now, I say it knowing that it will surely uplift his memory in our minds. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lachzor, binos desha yarbitzeini al mei menuchos inahaleini, nafshi yishovev yancheinu b'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begeitz al mobes lo irod ra ki ato imodi, shivtacho mishantecho heima yinachamuni, taroch lefanei shulchan negen tzororoi, dishanta b'shem en roshi kosi revaya, Ach tova chasedir defuni kol yimei chayoi, v'shavti beveis Adonai l'orech yamim. A psalm of David, Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. He causes me to lie down in lush pastures. He leads me beside tranquil waters. He restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for a length of days. We now will be headed out to the cemetery in Akron, and then Shiva will be held at the Pollack home on Sheffield. The pallbearers would please come forward.
very much.